just walk you through a few things. There's probably more than one problem, but the next thing to do is basically you need to log into Assembly AI and check the status of your recordings, because I'll walk you through. So I've often, to make things easier to debug, it's easier sometimes to put some stuff in the database so you can capture some information as things are processing. So I added this table called Z debugs. I call it Z so it goes to the bottom. And in the last recording, I can see that we went off to Deepgram, we got an ID, and we sent it the right webhook. So it's being sent to Assembly AI, but Assembly AI, for some reason, are not sending webhook information back to us. But in order to get to this point, there was one issue I needed to fix in here. Oh, and that's, you can see this happening in here. So when you click your save button, we go off to Assembly AI. This was good. This is really good. These are all good. This I'll talk about in a second. And then we send it off to Assembly AI, and then we record something in a Z debug table, just some information so we can sort of see the bubble processing. Otherwise, it's very hard to see bubble processing. You can look in the logs. It's very hard to make sense of the logs sometimes. So this is a nice, easy way to help debug your processing. So we send it off to Assembly AI. The bit I had to change here is, so this the URLs that Bubble produces when it saves files doesn't have the protocol, so it doesn't have HTTPS : in front of it. So I changed this and I added that into there, because what happens is Assembly AI calls back, calls back to your Bubble app and says, give me the file so I can start transcribing it. And the reason one of the reasons it was failing previously is because without that protocol, Assembly AI wasn't able to grab the file correctly. And I tested that by, this is what I was getting, and because the protocol was missing, I've edited this subsequently. But now what I did is I looked in the logs. I looked in the logs down here. I saw now that it's got the URL. I cut and pasted that in. I put that into a browser window. Just so this is me checking that Assembly AI can grab it and it can download the file. So that is good. And that was one problem. And I figured that out by looking in the logs in here. But what I then did, so it's going off to Assembly AI. It's going off to Assembly AI. They're giving us an ID. If you logged into Assembly AI and looked for a recording, an asynchronous recording with this ID, it'll tell you what's going wrong. Maybe your account has not got sufficient credit or something like that. It could be anything, but that's the next step, is look in Assembly AI. And then once you've got some information about that, in here, you'll notice in this webhook here, I added another debug in here. So when we receive a message, we'll be able to see something in this table, because one of the a common problem people have, but this is not a problem in your case, was not letting this run without, whether or not these should be set on or off. But so this will be when you do get the webhooks in, what you probably want to do is, because this is looking up your recordings, this is searching for one recordings, and because your one recordings are publicly visible, so your recordings are publicly visible, so just reflect on that statement. Your recordings are publicly available on the internet, and that's probably not what you want. So you'll need to understand privacy rules a bit better shortly. But because those are publicly open, and because this can be run, because it can be run without needs authentication, but to look up your stuff you don't need authentication. So this should work. But in any case, before even this starts to work, and I'm thinking I would suggest you do that because there are probably privacy rules down in here that you want to, there's almost certainly you want to make this more private. This is a technique where unauthenticated processes like this webhook are able to this unauthenticated process, assembly AI, is permitted to run without privacy rules. That's fair enough. But I digress. What we want to see is once you do submit, we want to see something appear in this table, in our debug table in here, and nothing's appearing. And we know that the webhook is good. That's what we sent to them, and we know that Assembly AI are receiving it, but for whatever reason, Assembly AI aren't processing it. So log into Assembly AI and look through and see if there's any clues as to why it's not being processed and sent, the webhook being invoked after transcription. Yeah, so it's not working, but one of the problems that was stopping it working has been fixed. And I'll just summarize that here. So update wherever it was, let's go here. No, where is it? Upload. Yeah, so that was problem number one, was just putting HTTPS in front, but that's still not fixed it. This will help debug it, but the next step is go to Assembly AI UI, have a look and see why this isn't transcribing.